Alright guys, I'm going to be doing some reviews of comics that were sent to me by my good friend Chris, and here we are with another one of Truth and Justice. Truth and Justice is basically a comic anthology that was actually a web series that basically it was these standalone stories for a lot of known or up and coming writers and artists, and it was meant as a web series to and the whole theme of the series was more or less these these 7 different superheroes doing a lot of heroic deeds that kind of embody Superman's whole truth and justice motif. The 7 characters are Superman, Batwoman, Damian Wayne, Jason Todd, Vixen, Zatanna, and John Constantine. This was a interesting book. It's pretty fun. I will say that it is pretty fun. I will say though that it does have some flaws. I mean, all anthology books do kind of have flaws here and there. But one of them is, I feel like this could have done without Superman himself. I feel like the idea of the whole Truth and Justice comic series would be better serviced if, other characters were, embodying what Superman meant, rather than have Superman in the title, if that makes any sense. Also, 3 of the 7 comics are all members of the Bat family. I can do with 1 or 2, but, having nearly half of these one-shots be focused on the Bat family, I'm like, guys, come on. Anyway, so yeah. So I'm just gonna go through. I'm gonna go through a few of them and kind of talk about my thoughts on them. Starting off, the first one was Vixen. The Vixen one is pretty fun. It deals with this return of these gods from African lore, the African gods. It has a really how it plays out and how Vixen defeats them using the power of a tardigrade is a lot of fun. We also get the reintroduction of the Global Guardians, which was a international group that kind of took over and was sanctioned by the UN to kind of take over after Justice League International fell. So that was pretty neat to see that the Global Guardians again. I thought that was a lot of fun. The Vixen story is just a lot of action, and it's always fun to see her. It's always fun to see Vixen. Following that is Superman's comic, and Superman's comic does deal with Superman battling the Master, a C-list villain of his called the Master Jailer, which is a reintroduction of him reintroduction of him. And in here, Superman is battling racism. That's the thing, is that the big thing in here is that Superman is combating racism, and he realizes that it's too big even for Superman. I kind of feel that this it does feel a little white savior to me for Superman. But as much as I love Superman, I feel I was kind of thinking it's cool that Superman's doing this, but it feels a little too white savior for me. If that makes any sense. I kind of was wishing that this was Icon, that this was a story for Icon or Mr. Terrific. I feel that's been something that's been really talked about in those books, and I feel like that could help here. But here is that Superman is battling racial injustice, and it also takes Superman kind of takes a back seat, and it's more of a Clark Kent story, which I'm always a fan of. When Clark gets to be a journalist and use his journalism to fight something rather than punch it some more times than often. My personal favorite is the John Constantine story, because in here it's him dealing with a cardinal more or less he got some people killed for fucking around with shit, typical Constantine stuff, and he crosses paths with Papa Midnight. It's a really cool story involving a young kid learning how to use magic, and it's more about showing it's like the perfect John Constantine, one and done story where he's just trying to clean up a mess he made in the past. Following that is Jason Todd's story, where he battles the Scarecrow, and it's your typical. Here's the thing with this and the Damian Wayne book. They're both very atypical of those stories. Jason Todd, he gets confronted with all the sins of, he gets confronted with the Joker, and, has to deal with Batman, and does he, feel disappointed in him and whatnot. It's all of the same tropes. It's the same thing with Damian. It's whenever I read a Damian Wayne comic, it has to involve Ra's al Ghul 90% of the time. Also, how the comic ends for the Jason Todd story, that comic really does feel like the writer wants to do something big in the future, but I don't know if they'll ever get to do that. Anyway, Batwoman's story was a lot of fun. I thought it was pretty cool. It kind of plays with folklore and whatnot. So, and she does a lot of monster hunting, so that is cool. The Zatanna one was also a lot of fun, seeing her battle Dr. Destiny. And seeing Dr. Destiny look like almost exactly like how he did in the Justice League cartoon was a lot of fun. And that's really what this is just fun. Like all anthologies, you're going to have some hits and you're going to have some misses. The Damian Wayne story about him and his birthday and also meeting the Babylonian gods, it's a weird story, and again, it goes back to, can Damian choose between his father and grandfather? That's every comic I've read with Damian Wayne, when it's just a one-and-done story or something. The only one I've really enjoyed of those, like, one-and-done stories where he has to, like, pick between his father and grandfather really is the Ra's al Ghul One Bad Day book. But yeah, it feels like some writers just don't know what to do with either Damian or Jason these days. Because it's all the same stuff. Like I said, it's the same stuff with Jason all the time, where it's like, Jason feels inadequate, and also he's still grappling with his death, and it has to involve a crowbar, whatever. I will say, though, it was pretty cool to see Henry Gilroy, the artist for the comic Chew, do the art for the Jason Todd book. All in all, I think this is okay. I think it's more discount price than anything else. If you want to read and see other characters, in one-and-done stories that are a lot of fun, I do think the best one in here I will say that the best one in here is the Constantine story, but the Zatanna one's a really close second. Actually, no, I kind of teeter on who would be second place, Zatanna or Superman. I really did, despite, I feel like it would have benefited better if it was like a comics about, and the story was told from Icon's perspective or Mr. Terrific. They still did a lot of the writer Brandon Easton still made a really good story, and it is cool to see Clark uses journalism skills to fight something that Superman can't. But the Zatanna one is also also a great story involving a villain we don't get to see a lot often, and who's also pretty terrifying, Dr. Destiny. But so those two kind of jockey for second place, but I think for me personally, it is the Constantine story that is the number one. All in all, like I said, this is more of a discount book if you want to read anthologies and learn more about some of these characters. I would say this is a good comic if you're looking to get your kids into reading comics, or if you're looking for, if you want to read, stories of characters like Vixen and all those others, this would be a good place to have your kids read the comic. I would actually say that this comic would actually really benefit from, for kids. This would be a great comic to give to your kid and let them read stories, because a lot of these are characters they would know, or some they would understand. And I know it's a comic involving Constantine as one of the main protagonists. All in all, a lot of fun. So Chris, thank you once again for this. Other than that, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.